We entered my room, and I set the candles ablaze with a careless spark from the flint, flames blooming obediently, casting shadows that looked positively eager to gossip about us. I drifted to the bed and claimed the brandy, breaking its seal with the delicate cruelty of a lover undoing laces. One glance at Maximilian. His nod was not merely assent, but invitation. I poured 2 golden measures and pressed one into his hand. Then I sank upon the bed, inviting, inevitable. He followed, and when the silver rims touched, they rang out with the delicate music of conspiracy. The brandy slid over our tongues, and silence, rich and velvet, wrapped itself around us. Then Maximilian, his eyes lit with equal parts curiosity and danger, asked, "So, Andreas, what is your plan?" I smiled. My dear Maximilian, had I known destiny would thrust me into such a predicament, I should have brewed some fearsome magical love potion before leaving home, I replied. One so potent that regardless of one's proclivities would keep you up all night and probably most of the next day, and putting you in such a sociable mood that you'd happily hump an unkempt sack of potatoes with a strategically placed rip in it. But alas, hell had no idea. So the best I can do is improvise, and hope it helps inspire you to great things tomorrow, and perhaps beyond. I patted his knee in a reassuring gesture. He placed his own hand heavily on mine in a tight grip. Andreas, whether your scheme works or not, I'm glad to spend my last night of bachelor's freedom with you. He squeezed my hand again and brought up the other behind my back, placing it on my left shoulder. If you want this old skinny bag of bones and fur, it's at your service, for anything young sir wishes, I said softly. Oh, yes, I do want, he whispered, and thrust his salivating mouth against mine. We kissed and grappled for a short while. Then he tugged at my gown, pulling it from my shoulder, allowing it to slip down my back. I felt my fur bristle all the way down my spine. We kissed harder, grinding canines together as his hand closed tight on my ribs on my left flank. I exhaled deeply, but fought my instincts. I stopped him. The plan. We mustn't forget the plan. Yes, what is this plan of yours, Andreas? He looked puzzled, yet slightly amused. I stood and let the gown slide to the ground and opened one of the boxes on the nightstand, retrieving a small cut-glass bottle with a silver lid. Maximilian looked at it with interest. Forest breeze, I explained, and gave the bottle a little shake. I thought that if you indulged your most carnal desires with this very special cologne wafting in your nostrils, perhaps a whiff of it in the future would be enough to resurrect pleasant memories, pleasant enough to rouse your passions anew. Maximilian watched the bottle intensely as he expertly disrobed. I, in turn, kept my gaze firmly on the young wolf's muscular body as it manifested itself in its full glory. I'm certainly willing to put in the work to find out. He grinned lasciviously at me. I took a small lace handkerchief from the box, undid the lid of the bottle, and transferred some of the scent to the cloth. I then bent and dabbed the moist corner on the base of my tail, then a quick dab behind each ear for good measure, put bottle and handkerchief on the stand, turned to Maximilian and rasped breathlessly, I'm your obedient servant tonight, whatever sir desires. I lay in the breathless indulgence of exhaustion, my head upon Maximilian's damp chest fur, listening as his heart, so recently intoxicated with frenzy, gradually resigned itself to a more sedate pace. The sheets, meanwhile, reclined in their own melodrama, flung in tragic abandon across the floor, or knotted upon the bed like the wreckage of some fever dream. The old oak four-poster, this rustic monument to sturdiness, endured Maximilian's exertions with a silent stoicism worthy of marble. Alas, my wrists and knee joints proved far less resilient. The candelabra with its stubborn crowns of unspent wax betrayed the hour as somewhere between 2 and 3, an interval in which respectable people pretend to be asleep. My guest, now half adrift in genteel dozing, would, if he crept back to his quarters, enjoy only a few more hours of rest before being required to don the borrowed brilliance of a dashing groom for the day's theatricals. I slipped from the bed with the stealth of an afterthought and turned my attention to the silver box. First, I retrieved one of my little indulgences, a small casket of miraculous snuff, which, like bottled dawn, reliably rouses the most fatigued body and compel even the laziest soul to impersonate vitality. I tapped some of the precious stimulant from its engraved container into a modest paper envelope, sealing it with a fold that promised discretion while concealing delicious indiscretion. I fetched a square of plain linen fabric and tightly wrapped both envelope and my near full bottle of cologne in a bundle for Maximilian to take with him. I looked around to see him now propped up on one elbow, resting the back of his head on the ornate carving of the headboard. "This is for you," I said. "All of my cologne, and a little something to sample before breakfast that will banish any lingering fatigue. A young groom yawning all the way through the ceremony is not an auspicious start to any marriage." I sank once more upon the edge of the bed, where a slow, warm, molten dampness betrayed itself with exquisite treachery, slipping from me like some clandestine confession. I shifted with the faintest of moist betrayals, an epilogue to Maximilian's earlier enthusiasms. "Well," I murmured, fidgeting with deliberate indolence, "if you insist on scattering such prodigious quantities of seed on more fertile ground than I, the world will be furnished with a veritable pack of little howlers before the year's end." Maximilian, draped in the careless magnificence of the utterly spent, regarded me with that half-amused, half-contrite expression. "Perhaps I could simply offer my balls in some temporary deputation, provided I get them back in good working order. Do you think some form of dark magic could enable that?" "My dear young sir," I began with great solemnity, "to the best of my knowledge, no disembodied scrotum has ever agreed with feigned delight to provide a weary wife with a back rub before bed, to admire with conviction each new dress or bonnet she parades before him, to remember flowers on anniversaries and special occasions, or to squander the noblest hours of dawn persuading some bawling infant to appreciate the virtues of peaceful slumber. These, my fine young friend, are to be your sacred obligations. Perform them with a smile nailed to your face, and whether love deigns to unpack its trunks in your household or not, you may at least keep resentment, recrimination, and private tears from your door. Who knows? In time you may even cultivate that rarest of marital luxuries, a mutual coexistence which, when polished sufficiently, glimmers as fondness. Anyway, once a bitch has pupped, she usually devotes so much care and attention to her little ones that she can become fiercely jealous of any male intrusion on her cozy realm of motherhood. She might constantly suggest that you take the opportunity of fine weather to go out riding or seeing to some estate matters, just to get you out of her fur for the day, then regaling you on your return with the latest news about gastric smells and wobbling first steps. All of which you will, of course, greet with proud smiles and phrases like, "Oh, that's wonderful," and "Oh, bless." Females are famously protective of their brood during the early stages. Who knows, she might even insist on separate bedchambers for the first 3 years. That has been known. "Are you sure you haven't been married, Andreas?" He frowned at me. No, but I know many a middle-aged bitch and vixen who has been, and sat listening with a sympathetic ear to all their tirades about useless husbands during informal girls' afternoon sherry and sausages get-togethers. I've no doubt you nod gravely, tut loudly, or offer a top-up of sherry at all the right moments, Andreas. Any other wise words of advice for me? Well, come the hour, I suggest you take the opportunity of washing and undressing in a darkened corner of the room in order to surreptitiously take a cologne-soaked corner of a handkerchief and stick it up each nostril before approaching the bed. I think that will successfully overwhelm your senses for an hour or so. I'm sure she'll also be so preoccupied with a dozen pieces of contradictory marital advice of her own, she won't even notice you applying it. Then, when in position, close your eyes and think of my eagerly wagging tail, and always, always remember to aim slightly lower than you are used to. I gave him a stern look. Oh, and don't chew down on the scruff of her neck as hard as you did mine. I rubbed the still tender spot and winced slightly. You might find later on she too enjoys a firm bite hold, Mr. Chewy. Maximilian retrieved his strewn clothes and started to dress, then sat back on the bed and pulled on his boots. I picked up my silk gown, slipped it on, and sat beside him. He turned to me. Andreas, my dear friend, I don't know what this new, respectable life has in store for me, but I will always retain the fondest memories of our short time together, with or without the help of your singular fragrance. He leaned over and gave me an affectionate nuzzling and licking. I, too, I said. You'd better find your way back to your own bed now, ready to be roused in a few hours by happy family members and servants rapping upon your door. We both stood, held hands for a moment. Thank you, Andreas, for everything. And wish me luck. I do, I replied. With that he turned, opened the door, and vanished into the darkness beyond. I smiled to myself, sniffed back a tear, rubbed the sore patch on the back of my neck again, and settled back on the bed with a quick throatful of warm, comforting brandy. Then, wrapping some of the chaotic sheets around myself, sighed, leaned over, and snuffed out the last of the candles.